Dr. Judy, let's define secure attachment.
Okay, so a securely attached child in the original Mary Ainsworth study is a child who, when they separate from the parent, they do show some distress. They're a little bit stressed out, but they're still able to kind of soothe themselves to some degree. And then once the parent comes back, they're so excited to see the parent, they give the parent a big hug. And then after that reunification, they go back to playing on their own and seem relatively happy. And as adults, they tend to be more comfortable in relationships overall. They're able to communicate their needs. They're able to be independent, but at the same time also get close to people without much problems. And just in general, people say that they're probably the best type of person to have any kind of relationship with.
When the child is having their mother leave and reuniting, what age range is that?
In the Mary Ainsworth study, it was usually between 7 to 8 months to about 2 years. And that's because in attachment theory, we believe that at about 7 months, the infant starts to become very discriminately attached to one or two primary caregivers in their life. And so they were really testing the strength of that specific bond, as opposed to when a baby is younger than that, it's a little bit more indiscriminate, meaning you might see a lot of people and you kind of hang out with everybody. It's not a big deal. You don't have as much of that close-knit bond with a couple of people in your life until a little later.
I just wanted to jump in real quick and say thank you for watching our YouTube videos. But did you know that you're just scratching the surface? Whether you're a patient here for yourself, or you're here for somebody else, or perhaps you're a mental health professional, we can help you along your mental health journey at MedCircle.com. There we have a variety of membership options available that will give you access to our video library that has more than 900 titles. You'll also be able to attend live weekly workshops and get your questions answered by the same doctors you're watching here on YouTube. Use the links in the description of this video, or just head on over to MedCircle.com. All right, now let's go back to the discussion.
What are some other signs that a parent might be facilitating a secure attachment style into their child?
Well, I think in general, it's really about a parent who can be available for the child's emotional and physical needs. As mammals and as human beings, we can't take care of ourselves at that age. And so it's really important that we feel like we have a secure base to return to. So, when you are a very good parent and establishing secure attachment in your babies, it's really about kind of being around, but still letting them explore. But then when they want to come back to you for nurturance or a hug, you're around. If they're hungry, they can come to you and you're going to give them food, So it's really about being available to your child, but not necessarily overburdening them with a ton of affection and not letting them go, because that actually doesn't develop strong resilience skills in your child. So it's more about kind of being around when your child needs you, but also not being overbearing.
So feeling good about those moments where your child is playing independently and not thinking, I should be over there and being a good mom right now. You might be being a good mom by letting them go do that alone.
Exactly, and it's really about having a combination of the two. So sometimes you're playing with your child, sometimes you're not, but you're in the same room or you're in the next room and you're available to your child when they need you.
Yes. Can anyone really have a secure attachment style? Like, I think I'll find out later that my personality dictates that I did not have a secure attachment style growing up, but I think I had a great childhood.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, in general, it's this sort of idealized type of parenting almost. I think in the Western Hemisphere, we also talk about what we call authoritative parenting, right? So authoritarian would be a super bossy parent. A permissive parent is like one that has no rules. And then the authoritative parent is somebody who somehow spans the middle. They kind of, dictate things when they need to, but also allow you to conversate with them and be flexible with negotiations. But that's not a parenting style that is embraced by all of the world.
Right.
In certain parts of the world, the parent is the power structure in the family, and you should just do what they say. And those kids come out fine also, right? So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is like certain families or certain cultures. I'm not just talking about ethnic groups, I'm talking about all kinds of cultural groups. Maybe the idea of a secure mother or secure attachment mother isn't really the true ideal. Maybe you can develop very well, even though maybe your attachment is more on the avoidance side, right? And so I think that there's some arguments about that, and there's certainly criticisms about the original ideas of attachment and what that secure attachment really even means. And so I think it's a really good point, and I think that while it may be something that isn't necessarily the gold standard, certain aspects of what we call a secure person is good. You know, this idea of being able to be flexible, like you can be independent on your own, but you're also not overly codependent, but you also can be close to people without feeling discomfort. Those are, I think, really good things for everybody to strive for.
Of course. How does a parent foster more of that secure attachment within their child, especially when the child is showing really intense anxiety and almost a temper tantrum when that parent leaves?
Yeah, and this is a good question because there is an interaction between the parents and the child's temperament, right? So temperament is something that we think of as innate. You know, certain children, they're just more smiley, they just make more eye contact with people around them. Other children are not, they're more fussy. And these things relate to temperament. It's sort of thought to be something that's kind of inborn. And so I think in general, parents sometimes foster whatever they see in front of them. So if there's a child whose temperament is more clingy and anxious, perhaps the mother will also reflect more anxiety, like, oh my gosh, are they going to be okay on their own? Maybe I shouldn't go out on date night with my husband because what if my child needs me? But actually in some ways that reinforces the anxiety in your child, right? Because children are actually quite intuitive and they can sense emotions in their caregivers, right? And so I think it's interesting because when you see that dynamic, you can kind of see that almost it's like a chicken and egg syndrome after a while. So what's really happening here? And so I think as parents, you have to monitor your own feelings irrespective of your child's temperament in some ways. It's sort of like, okay, the child is acting very anxious. That brings up a lot of anxiety in me. So in some ways you have to modulate your own emotions and appear more calm so that the child can really learn from that and say, oh, maybe there's nothing to be anxious about. I need to start to learn how to self-soothe those feelings. And so I think some of it is that parents being really attuned to that and still maintaining structure despite your child's temperament.
What are some memories that people would have that would indicate that they grew up with parents who really fostered that secure attachment style?
I think when children have memories where maybe they broke an arm and their parents took them to the hospital right away. And
but what parents are waiting?
You know, you would be surprised.
Really?
And I think maybe that is something that borders on trauma for some people when they recall, for example, them having a fever and their parents are like, well, let me finish up this one meeting and then we'll go to the hospital. Even those things that don't seem that harmful, like a parent's just like, well, it's a fever. I can wait 30 minutes. Let me just finish my meeting. Children remember that forever. And they remember you as somebody who didn't meet their needs when they needed you. Or, you know, parents who, for example, foster memories in children where, you know, they walk them to school and then the child was a little bit afraid of the door, like, I don't want to leave. And the parents are like, you know what, we'll be right here. We'll wait out here for about 20 minutes. And you go in and we'll see how you do. And then, like, if you don't come back in 20 minutes, then we'll leave. Just this idea of, I'm still here, but I still want you to develop yourself as an individual. And I think that sometimes children will reflect those types of experiences. Oh, my parents walked me to school, but then, like, they left me there. And then they came and checked on me during lunch and then they left again, you know? So this idea of checking in with your child to make sure that you're available for them when they really need you.
So how does a parent walk that line then between creating secure attachment and checking in with their child and not going over to, now I'm helicoptering and I'm overbearing, I'm actually creating more bad than good?
I think so much of it is about how the parent exhibits their own emotions. So, you know, again, if they're checking in like, are you okay? Are you okay? And they're starting to act very anxious, that's a different message for the child than just, hey, I just popped by during my lunch break to see how you're doing at lunch. And then everything seems fine, so I'm going back to work. You know, that very casual check-in that seems very emotionally stable, I think is really helpful for kids.
Yeah, kids really do pick up on that.
Don't they? It's crazy.
My nephew fell a couple of weeks ago when I was visiting him. He fell and he hit his chin right on the ground. And my initial instinct was to go, oh man, ouch. But I knew if I did that, he would start crying. So when he fell, I made that face. He didn't see it. And I go, nice job. All right, now can you stand up? And he stands up. And I go, cool, now bring me that ball or whatever we were doing. And he totally forgot about it. But if I would have made that reaction big, he would have reacted big.
Totally. Yeah.
If you've been enjoying the videos on MedCircle's YouTube channel, then you will absolutely find value in a MedCircle membership. At MedCircle.com, you can learn about all of the benefits of a MedCircle membership, including access to our award-winning video library and the ability to ask our doctors your questions. It's an incredible benefit that I want to invite you to take a look at. Use the links below this video or just go to MedCircle.com. Now, back to our discussion.
What are some typical behaviors of someone with this attachment style once they're an adult?
Okay, so in romantic relationships, they tend to be able to judge each relationship for that relationship alone instead of having like a one style pattern for coping. So, they can deal with people's idiosyncrasies in flexible ways. They seem to be more comfortable with closeness in relationships, but also they can be independent too. If you leave them alone or if you don't see each other for a few days, they're fine also. They're not overly distressed when they're by themselves. And even if they've had bad relationships, they're still able to gather themselves up and move on to the next one after a period of grief, as opposed to completely becoming this person who, says, well, all men are bad, I might as well not have relationships. Things that are very dismissive and black and white, those are more characteristic of insecure attachment styles. Somebody who's secure, when they have disappointments, they learn their lessons and they move on. And even in their careers, they tend to be that way too. So they tend to be able to work in jobs that are independent, but also they can work in teams and they don't get too distressed by being in a team, the closeness of a team, the fact that you have to be together a lot. And in friendships as well, they tend to be good friends, meaning that they are communicative with their friends. They're not passive aggressive in their communication. If they're upset about something, they can be assertive about it. I mean, this is why it's so funny, because I feel like secure attachment is this like idealist
Sounds
thing,
wonderful.
right? But it's like, how many people are doing that on every given day? I think most people probably falter here and there, but I think the general template of a securely attached person is, they can deal with disappointments. They'll still be sad, they'll still have problems, but they're not gonna have this huge reaction towards it that seems like an overreaction or black and white coloring of some sort,
right,
where you kind of just judge something immediately and you don't move forward and you feel held back maybe by some of your past experiences.
Yeah, I'm going through the roster of everyone I know, and I think there's only one person that kind of follows that I know. The rest of us, we struggle. We don't show up every time and nail it perfectly.
Totally.
How does a secure attachment style impact friendships?
Well, I think a secure attachment style impacts friendships in the way that a good friend is somebody who is available to you when you need them, and you have that reciprocal relationship. And so that's really what a securely attached person is like in a friendship. They're very reciprocal, like they're happy to give, but they also take sometimes, and they're certain enough to ask for what they need. Sometimes people who are, insecure attached, they might actually be extremely clingy in a friendship, or maybe they're even very dismissive in a friendship, where when somebody has a more emotional need, they kind of run away from that friend. A securely attached friend doesn't run away from emotions, but they're also not overly emotional, so they don't get into it with you so deeply in the trenches where it feels like your identities are starting to fuse. I mean, they still have their own identity, and they maintain that identity while still being able to support you.
Yes, excellent. Any final words on secure attachment style?
Yeah, I think in many ways when we talk about secure attachment, it kind of sounds like we're talking about this ideal, and I really think that securely attached individuals still have problems. So it's not so much that they don't ever have problems, but it's just that they show up to their problems in an authentic way, and they have a very flexible way of utilizing their coping strategies. In general, securely attached people are just more resilient. They're more resilient mental health-wise, and they're more resilient physically. So we find that people who have secure attachment, they have less chronic illnesses. And when they do, they have less severe chronic illnesses. And in terms of their mental health, they tend to be able to cope better whenever they have depression or anxiety. And they are also at less risk for more severe mental health conditions. So it is a great thing when you are somebody who is truly securely attached.
All right, well, let me ask you this before we move into our next session then. Can somebody who was raised with something other than secure attachment grow up and change into and start behaving as though they were raised with a securely attachment family?
I think you can develop a different type of attachment as you get older.
Okay.
So that's why it's so important to know, because
That's
when
right.
you are aware of your attachment issue, if you know that it's a difficulty, then when you work on it, you can actually start to gear yourself more authentically towards a securely attachment person. And
Right.
I actually have seen so many people start with insecure attachment and over their lives develop more resilience and become more securely attached and be able to express that 99% of the time.
Amazing.
So it's great. I mean, sometimes they still have sort of the fallbacks where it's like, oop, this is my old attachment
Yep.
coming up, but then they see it, they move move on in a different way, and they're able to cope much better than they were maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Great. Well, getting us closer to that secure attachment style for ourselves requires us to look at the insecure types. We'll go with our first one, anxious preoccupied attachment, in our next session.